welcome to this episode of Inside Marine. Today, I'm joined by Jeff Houlgrave, the Senior Associate at Marina Projects and also a previous chairman at Superyacht UK. Welcome to the show, Jeff.
Hi, James. Thank you for inviting me.
So, Jeff, really great to have you here today. And we like to get straight into it. And we like to go right back to the very beginning. I'd love to hear, your story of how you came to get into this fantastic industry that we're in.
I came into this industry really by default a long time ago now. I trained as a teacher many years ago. I taught for quite a short while and then ran away to sea. And I spent a number of years racing around the world. I did the round the world yacht race in 1981 and spent 8 years racing professionally after that. In the late 80s, there were a number of reasons why I left racing. People that I raced with died in races, and it became quite close that, do I continue and take the risk or not? And I decided not, and got married, had children, and basically found a proper job. And that proper job in the marine industry was working with a company called Dean & Diebold, who were developing marinas and residential marinas, particularly. Hythe Marina Village, for example, was their first. Shamrock Quay, Ocean Village. And they also started to develop in the southwest where I lived and still live. So I knew John Dean and Richard Reddyhoff from racing. And so ended up working for them in the southwest. Mm-hmm. Very soon after that, Dean & Diebold was taken over by a company called Marina Developments, MDL, not in its current form, but in a different form. And that made a larger marina group. And so the Dean & Diebold personnel moved to MDL, and we became part of that bigger team, if you like, and moved forward developing that. At that time, I was operational. I was running marinas, developing boatyards, largely on the back of my boating experience and understanding what boat users needed, rather than any academic operational management course. So it was just as a user, I could understand what the boat owner needed first and foremost. So, and my racing experience also included quite a lot of press activity. So I knew all the main journalists in the industry, which helped taking things forward for the business. We acquired a number of other marinas over time, and I eventually ended up at Hamble at head office sometime in the early 90s for 6 or 7 years, and then left to do other things, as a number of the senior team did. And I then joined Camper Nicholson's Marinas as they were expanding into Europe, Malta, Turkey, which was a new experience for me to be working abroad and expanding into the superyacht sector. So with that experience, Camper Nicholson's then moved to become a company on this listed stock market. They became a listed company. And there were some issues that arose because of that listing that I wasn't comfortable with. And so I then was offered a job looking at leisure assets in Croatia. So I ended up in Croatia for a couple of years, not full-time, but on and off, looking at developing. We finished one marina, started to resurrect a significant boatyard on an island. And then the financial crash came. So came home and then moved back to help the guys I used to work with at Dean & Diebold come full circle, who had founded Marina Projects in 2002. So I joined them in 2009 on an ad hoc basis, and then sort of became more formalized, and I've been there ever since. So, and the last few years have been really busy at Marina Projects, a growing company. Some great projects, Porto Montenegro, Porto Novi in Montenegro. We own marinas in this country, Whitehaven Marina, James Watt Dock Marina in Greenock, and manage New Haven, and lots going on all the time. So it's a young company with a good team of people who have a wide variety of skills, complementary. And we have some fantastic projects, some of which I can't talk about because of confidentiality, unfortunately, but we're busy working. My main focus for the past 3 years has been in the Red Sea on, I'm not sure the word means, but giga projects, huge things with huge teams of people. And since COVID, instead of jetting off for meetings around the world, it's just been sat on Teams meetings, which has been a nice change and I think equally productive, because we're at the design stage. We don't have to put spades into the ground just yet, so it is productive. So it's been a good few years since then. Yeah.
And I'm really interested because you've obviously been in the marina game, let's call it that, for such a long time now. I mean, how have you seen it change, I suppose, over the years, if it has at all?
Well, I think it depends very much on where you talk about it. In the UK, the marina had been, well-established sites in locations we all know about, Hamble, Cowes, all those things are a relatively old infrastructure, and they've been upgraded over time. But equally, they don't have huge capacity. So, and the demographic of the user changes over time as well. And so it's trying to match the demographic of the user, the demands of the user with the offer on the marina. I think the marinas in different parts of the world where, in greenfield sites, for example, Port of Montenegro actually was a brownfield. That was an old naval base, heavily polluted, heavily infested with old weapons. All of that had to be cleared, but it's now a fantastic flagship for the industry, really. So there are sites where it can be expanded, but in the traditional marina areas on the south coast, northern France, and the sort of the Mediterranean Riviera coast, if you like, those marinas have been there a long time, and it's increasingly difficult to they take a long time to build. For example, Port of Montenegro from start to finish was probably 12 years.
Wow.
Before, from thinking about it, then design, permitting, concept, etc., 10 to 12 years. This country, extremely difficult with the marine regulations, environmental constraints, planning, plus all the cost of protection of infrastructure. So it's extremely difficult to develop new marinas in the UK. And that's a real problem now, because with there's a pent-up demand now, evident in the boating industry, because people wanted to stay at home, obviously, they're forced to stay at home. So boats are not doubling in value, but they're becoming really quite difficult to get hold of, particular types of boats. And the problem is the customer will buy a boat. Yes, let's buy a boat. Where are we going to put it? That's the real problem.
Yeah.
Marinas are pretty much full. And the traditional mooring buoys on rivers and estuaries that used to be there, they've gone for various reasons to a degree. But people who are new into the industry, new entrants, they want better than rowing out to a mooring buoy in an Avon inflatable. They want to be able to walk to their boat. They want to be able to be plugged into electricity. They want Wi-Fi. They're the two most important things in a marina. Do you want to guess what they are?
Oh, you go ahead with it.
No, go.
Okay. Then it's the experience is an easy one for you to get on and off your boat?
Two things to make the manager's life easy. You have good Wi-Fi and hairdryers.
Okay.
And that's it.
Simple.
It is very simple. You don't need much more than that. And indeed, I won't say which one, but quite worryingly, there is a marina in Scotland that has hair straighteners in the gents.
Right.
But no, it's a bit of a sort of tongue in cheek, but it is that modern boat owners expect a different standard and quality of service than previous generations did.
Yeah.
And new marinas are being refurbished. Buckler's Hard, which we've just done, but it takes time and money. Nos Marina in the Dart, which is Premier Marinas, we've been involved in that. Again, that's a refurbishment project, an expansion. But there are no greenfield marinas. There are no new marinas in the places where the demand is. So it is very difficult. The manufacturers, they're gone bigger and bigger and bigger, wider and wider and wider. And that has a consequence on an existing marina's capacity to accommodate, modern boats. It's not unlimited. I know of a case where a guy has currently a 45-foot motorboat. He would like to have a 65, but his berth is 52. Yeah. So he has to buy a 52 because he can't get another berth. So it's constrained by all sorts of things, really. It's also I'm also concerned about accessibility for new entrants into it. At the lower end, you can quite easily go on any website now and find a 25-foot sailing boat of decent quality and equipment for less than £10,000. But where are you going to put it? If you find somewhere to put it, it's probably going to cost you £3,000, a third of its value, to park it. And that's not the end of the running. The rest of the running costs aren't crippling, but the berthing cost is, and that prevents people, getting into the industry. And I think the new, the millennials, and my daughter's one, if they want something, you go and rent it. They want to use a boat, they'll go and rent a boat. And maybe that's something that, and I know things are moving in that direction sometimes, maybe that's another option for people in the industry, that the boats are provided and available for rent in a different way than the normal charter operations. To try to accommodate that demand from younger people.
And do you see more of those kind of boat clubs and sort of higher facilities and becoming, I guess, more as standard within the marinas or new marina developments or development plans, sort of an acceptance of that new way of doing it?
I think it's an important revenue stream and protection of revenue for the business to consider. Yes, it's an investment, but it needs to be a standalone, business, if you like, within the marina operating business. But it does provide access to, for new entrants to get afloat and feed customers in. So I think there's a lot of, and I'm sure people are thinking about it, but higher strategic level than me, as to how we get these new entrants in and how we service their needs and how we meet their requirements. But for the past 30 years, the demographic shows that the boat owners only want to be in one of 3 or 4 places. Yes, you can find a marina berth in Hull, but you can't find one in Hamble. Everybody wants to be on the south coast to a degree, and that to a degree also applies internationally as well. If you look at the Riviera, the French Riviera, Monaco, Nice, Antibes, all of that is jam-packed. Yeah, jam-packed. The billionaires with their motor, they don't need to be there, but they want to be there. Yeah. So they don't have to be there, but they absolutely want to be there. And so you can offer them a berth in at somewhere, in Morocco, for example, which might cost, I don't know, £1 million for a 25-year deal, say. They don't care about the cost. It's not of interest to them. They want to have their berth in the prime spot, whatever it costs. So it's difficult to expand into different countries that are not mainstream.
Yeah. And you mentioned that you'd spent a lot of your time working in the Red Sea area. And I mean, obviously that's seems to be a part of the region of the world which seems to be constantly growing from a marine point of view, a leisure marine, super yacht point of view, and we see these huge kind of luxury marinas being built or developed or at least in concept. And I'm interested to get your experience of how that region has, I guess, changed over the years.
Well, I think the region is going to change. It hasn't changed yet. There's a little bit of activity to the south, but on the Saudi Arabian side, it hasn't changed yet. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia have a number of mega projects which are in the public domain. Neom is a huge development city, massive development in the north. About 150 miles further south, there's a development called Amala, which is a resort development comprising 3 main resorts and an island and marinas. And then further south still, there's a development called the Red Sea Project, which is sort of encompassing a number of smaller islands on a reef structure, very like the Maldives in a way. So these mega projects are underway, but at the moment there is nothing there. So everything has to be provided. So electricity, water, sewage, waste, all of the infrastructure, the basic infrastructure has to be provided at a strategic national level first. And then come down to a project, regional level, and then a project level, and then a site level. So all of these things are major projects, major cost, and lots of decisions have to be made quite early on to enable that. So, for example, yes, we want a marina in this place X, but we need to know how much electricity that will need to start the process at the other end of the chain to get that electricity from wherever it's got to come from to service that marina. And we say, well, we can tell you that if you tell us how big the boats are going to be. We don't know that yet.
Yeah.
So we then have to start that process to almost design that to get the answer for the infrastructure to go back to do that. So there's lots of complex discussions to produce a marina of that scale in a development of that scale.
Yeah. And are those marinas being built, do you feel, with a growing kind of interest in boating in mind, or are they being built with the view that people will come from other regions to use the area? What's the motivation?
I think the proposition is that the marinas will be a facility for internal growth of the activity. They're not providing. They will provide some berths from other areas, but they'll be standalone facilities with their own customers. And yes, some of the bigger boats can transit Suez and have the range to travel. But once you get down to 30 meters, then the range becomes quite limited. So the popular, and again, the resorts that surround these marinas, the hotel guests want to go on a boat. So they're charter boats, basically, dive boats, dinner boats, cruising boats, just for the day. And they just provide that service. There will be visitors for sure. There will be royal visitors for sure. There will be other visitors, but they will be at the bigger end, not the smaller end.
Okay. It's really fascinating to hear of all of the sort of the different moving parts and considerations and, even before you start building the thing or, or even knowing that you can build it, I suppose.
Well, it's you end up, there's the environmental considerations, and the Red Sea is particularly sensitive, and the kingdom are very, very conscious of delivering a sustainable product, whatever it is. And so it is extremely, extremely tightly controlled. The information that comes forward from studies is absorbed and considered, and everybody has their say, and the development plan has to fit in with that. It's not, there's no compromise. His Highness the Prince has said there is no compromise with the environment, and that's it. So turtles, wildlife, all of those things they have their own separate studies, to deal with all of that. And so it is huge constraints, but there are opportunities to do it to not to affect all of that fauna, wildlife, birds, and all of that. Every element of it is under consideration, which is good. Is good.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I mean, over the sort of up to the present day, you've obviously worked. And your work either has taken you living in different countries or working with different cultures in marinas all over the world. And, that's not always an easy thing to do. And I'd be really interested just to hear your, advice for somebody, who is going into a role maybe that is having to work or live within new or different cultures, in your experience?
I think firstly, take the opportunity. If an opportunity arises, absolutely take it, and embrace the role and embrace the culture you end up being within. Turkey, where we built Port Göcek, I think in 2000. The Turkish people are, a fantastic race of people. Clever, intelligent, friendly. They've got huge amounts of skills, architectural skills, creative skills, technical skills. They've got everything that you need, and are really very, very nice people. And if I have an opportunity to go to Turkey now, I take it with both hands. It's a lovely place to go. Croatia, again, Montenegro to a degree, and the Adriatic both. Again, really hardworking, generally, clever people, particularly the younger generation who are very well educated. Whoever goes there and works with them will certainly learn something. And I'm sure have something to offer to them as well, because they're very receptive. They're not, they don't say, well, we do it this way, that's it. There are frustrations, there are real frustrations in these countries on regulations that you perhaps, don't understand. And then when you do understand them, they make a nonsense of it. For example, in Croatia, you can go into a shop and you say, I'd like 2 bottles of beer, please. And they say, no, you can't have them. I said, why? Because you've no empties. You have to bring back 2 empties to buy 2 bottles of beer. So I said, well, where do I get the empties from in the first place? Where does that start? I'm here. I want to buy 2 bottles of beer to take to somebody I'm having dinner with. No, you can't have it. You haven't got any empties. So what a rule is that? I don't know. So there are things like that frustrate you. But generally, it's an opportunity that people should take.
Great. And, I recognize that there's not huge amounts you can tell us because of, NDAs and things you can't say about marinas. But, in general, what is happening in the business right now? I'm really specifically interested to know if, with this sudden increased interest in boating kind of almost globally, is there a sudden kind of increase in interest in marina developments and marina projects coming in? You see?
Yeah, there is well, if we start off in March 2020, COVID kick off, if you like, everybody in every business sort of thought, well, how are we going to survive all this? What do we do now? We have an emergency budget and we have a plan, and perhaps, and very quickly for us, we continued without pause on our existing projects, and almost immediately other projects were knocking on the door as well. And that's continued apace since then. A lot of them are very early stages. Some are, again, concepts in different parts of the world, in this country as well. Also studies on market studies, for example, early stages of market studies. So that has shown there is still the interest in developing. There is also, I think, a fundamental change where the marinas are unlikely to be standalone elements, because the cost of them, particularly if you have to build a breakwater, is so expensive that the business can't support it. It's just not viable. And so there's an increasing element now of marinas being part of wider resort developments.
Okay.
So the cost of the marina is absorbed across the whole of the development. And that's the case in Porto Montenegro, Porto Novi, whereas the wider development, the marina is an asset within the whole, if you like. And it will, on an operational basis, income from berthing will generally meet OPEX, if you like, to a degree, pretty much, with a little bit of profit. But if you add in the capital cost of the infrastructure, it can't. And so that capital cost is then spread across the whole. And there's an increasing move where a resort will have a marina.
Okay. And do you see that that sort of trend continuing now? Is that really the more will become the norm with future developments?
I think it is generally. It's happened in this country. Brighton Marina, New Haven Marina, Hythe Marina Village, Ocean Village, Melbourne Marina Village in Plymouth, Kip Marina in Scotland. There are examples where that's exactly happened here. I don't see a major development of that sort in the UK at all. I don't know where it would happen. But abroad, there are still opportunities. But again, it comes down to where, because again, the people want to go to the various places they want to go to. There is, we, Marina Projects, we keep a track of the whole of the superyacht fleet. And we then can produce information from that data that shows where people are going, when, how long they stay, etc., etc. And we put that into heat maps to show clients, because we often get asked, well, what boats are going to come to this area? And we can show them. It might be none. The answer might be there aren't any boats coming to this area, but very often there are heat maps. We show very clearly that the majority of the superyachts in the Mediterranean, for example, stick in the Riviera, sort of Ligurian coast, Sardinia, the Amalfi coast, Greece a little bit in the summer, and Turkey a little bit in the summer. And then in the winter, it all shrinks back. Palma, Balearics, eastern Spain, and the sort of the Ligurian sort of Riviera again. And it's very difficult to change that. They don't want. They're not particularly adventurous. They're the odd ones, but the majority of them stay where they are. Keep going.
And could that change with the advancements of technologies and fuels, or maybe how independent the vessels can be for longer? Which we're obviously seeing in yacht development quite a lot.
Yeah, the majority of the big boats, sort of 50 meter plus, they're pretty self-contained. Yeah, they can go anywhere they want to go and survive quite happily. With the existing fuel technology, I think there'll be a period where new fuels, whatever they might be, will limit range more than enhance it, because there won't be the service provision in different places. For example, let's say we have a new hydrogen super yacht. That's fantastic. You can fill up at base. Where's he going to fill up next? There are no hydrogen fuel berths in the places you might want to go. And the same with hybrid technology, different charging facilities. They're not, until all that infrastructure catches up, then it's difficult. So I think there'll be a short-term blip where people perhaps stay more local. There are always the more adventurous ones. There are always the ones that go to Alaska or the Antarctic or the Falklands and things like that. Always those odd ones. And again, it's really interesting. I did an analysis of the 100-meter plus fleet for a client. And it showed, for example, there's a yacht called Dilbar, 156 meter, biggest, I think still heaviest by tonnage, based in Antibes. And a couple of years ago, I think now, all he did was go to Sardinia and back. That's all he did. Back was upwards. Another 100-meter yacht, which was the late Jim Clark's yacht, he circled the world, basically, all over the place. So they have very different things, but the majority aren't like the Jim Clark yacht. They stay more local according to the owner's wishes, really. So I think it's going to be a difficult thing to move people away from those areas. They have houses, on the south of France. They have their private jet that lands at Nice. It's all part of their particular life package, really. It's what they do. And they're all constrained, just like you and I, or less me now, but probably you, we're all constrained by school holidays.
Yeah.
Every single person in your office, billionaires, whoever, they're all constrained by school holidays. They've all got kids and they all go on holiday at the same time, whether it's winter skiing or boating in the summer. It all affects the activity, and that's what happens, is that they all go and have a good time in the places they all know. The real sailors are not constrained by that. They go after but they're tiny numbers.
Yeah. And you hear quite a lot about, and you mentioned it, that the marinas are full, certainly here in the UK, and I'm assuming that issue is relatively global. This trend in boating increasing is as I understand, pretty global, and that sort of forces maybe people to go to different places. And is there a particular kind of up and coming region which maybe you can see as in the future as becoming one of those traditional regions that you talked about?
I think in a way the Red Sea is likely to be the one, partly because of its proximity to the Mediterranean, and partly because of its winter climate. So I think the Red Sea is likely to become an alternative to the Caribbean. But beyond that, you're fairly adventurous to take a boat through Suez in the first place. You're even more adventurous to take it to the Seychelles, and beyond. These are big journeys for people. The owners generally don't go on the journeys. They'll fly to wherever the yacht goes. But they're big journeys. But people do. We had a boat in Scotland at our marina at James Watt 2019. It arrived. A boat called Amaryllis, 88 meter, came from Florida. The owner was a keen cyclist, or is a keen cyclist. The boat itself had any number of cycles of any value. You can imagine push bikes. On his crew, he had an ex-Olympic cycle man from the UK. The owner flew over. They took the boat up the west coast of Scotland, stopping at various places, and cycled up all the hills. They came back. He flew off, and the boat went back to America. So, just the cost of all of that just to go cycling in Scotland. But I don't begrudge any of these people having these boats, because the cost of building is huge, but the time of building, for example, a 150 meter boat might cost, I don't know, 400 million, say, whatever it is. It might have 4 million man hours of yard time. It will have another 3 million man hours of subcontractor time, and all of that is feeding families. All their money buying the boat is going into a local economy for 4 or 5 years. So yes, it's his money. He can choose what he does with it, and that's absolutely fine. And yes, some people might see it as obscene to own such a thing, but he can afford it, so why not? But that money is not wasted money. It does go into an economy.
Yeah, no, I think sometimes that's sort of forgotten a bit, hasn't it? It's a really good point. Yeah, great. Okay, you touched on some of the things that you've experienced when it comes to some of the research around the wildlife in the area, or and a marina development. You mentioned turtles, and quite an important topic. I think certainly for us and in our industry right now is sustainability. And, I'd love to hear your thoughts on kind of what that means to you and what you see out there in the marina sector, I suppose, that, people are doing that bit right. And what do we need to be focusing on?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a huge difference in approach now to recycling. Ashore, huge difference in approach to managing water cleanliness in different areas, and I think that's standard. That's just that's expected. A lot of the older boats don't have holding tanks, and it's still strange to me that you can go 3 miles out and empty your holding tank, but you can. So yeah, I think increasing number of pump out facilities for people, keeping water clean. I think management of the boats themselves as well. Keeping boats away from wildlife. Keeping speedboats and jet skis away from wildlife areas. Needs more control. I'm not in favour of control per se, but I think it's important that the wildlife are not disturbed. And I know it does happen. It does happen, down here in Devon in various places. But it's something I think should be more controlled. And I think it's education, really. It's education. And I think, as I get older, I'm more inclined to the view that perhaps, and perhaps this is controversial, but I'm more inclined to the view that there should be increased licensing for boat users.
And who, can the marinas themselves take some responsibility for the education of their berth holders and things like that?
I think they do generally. Do generally. There are codes of practice. There are standards, accreditation schemes, gold anchor, Blue Flag. I think all of those are well recognised, and I think the marinas do try to educate the customers as far as possible.
Great. Okay. So look, I mean, it's been brilliant kind of hearing your take on the industry and what's happening next, and sort of, your journey through. And, I'd love to just kind of find out a little bit more about you, Jeff, and this is the part of the podcast where we try and get to know you a little bit more. And one of the ways we do that is to get you just to tell us a bit more about, what would be your perfect weekend?
Well, my perfect weekend. It really linked to my main hobbies, and they both contradict each other to a degree. So I restore vintage aeroplanes and fly them. I also restore a historic lifeboat, which I've just nearly finished. And they both need good weather. So I have to look at the weather. I think, do I go flying or do I go down to the boat? And that's a bit of a conflict. But perfect weekend would be boating on the Saturday, come back, flying on the Sunday.
Yeah. And where did the interest for the flying and the aircraft come from?
Well, when I gave up racing, I felt I needed to do something, a bit of adventure. I couldn't just sit at home. And so my dad was in the RAF. I'd flown in other planes. I had an interest in aviation. So I did my PPL and flew the normal Cessna stuff. And then I then got involved in vintage aviation, and we spend more time restoring and talking about it than we do flying, but they're nice old things. So, yeah. And the same with lifeboats. I've just finished restoring a Watson 47 called the Robert, which was the lifeboat out in the Fastnet disaster from Baltimore. Wow. So I restored it in 2019, and I took it back to Baltimore for the 40th commemoration. And the coxswain of the existing Baltimore lifeboat served on my boat in 79. So there's a bit of history there and things. So that sort of keeps me, out of mischief, if you like, is fiddling with old boats and fiddling with old planes.
Yeah, great. And what's next for you, Jeff?
What's next for me? Well, I think Marina Projects is moving forward apace, but it's not rushing forward. It's on really good foundations and develops the business on reputation, which is good. And I'm very happy to be part of that for as long as you need me, really. So, and I'm sure at some point they won't. So,
I can't imagine that's anytime soon.
Well, fingers crossed.
And look, one final question. If you were to give one piece of advice to somebody who was entering the industry, what would you give them?
I think listen to everybody, reflect on what they say, and then make your own decision. Great
advice. Jeff, it's been absolutely brilliant having you on Inside Marine today. It's been fantastic hearing your insight into the marine industry. Wish you the best of luck. Wish you all the best of luck at Marina Projects, and hopefully you can come back soon and update us with what's been happening.
Will do. Thanks very much, James.
Thanks, Jeff.
Good. Bye-bye.